Not here?
Jeff Weiss.
Yes. Here.
Okay. So I guess the further order of business here is to review and approve the minutes of November the 2nd. And I don't really think I've gotten the minutes of November the 2nd.
And I apologize, I did not bring a copy of it, but it was part of the
Was it
email
online?
that, it was part of the email that Teresa sent with the agenda attached.
I don't think that, I printed both of those, and it doesn't seem to have come to me.
Well, we had the wrong date, it might have been confusing, but you had the January 12th date minutes too. I think.
So why don't you do that on the same one on that as well?
Anyway, maybe we should leave the approval of the minutes till the next meeting.
We'll do that. I'm going to bring copies at the next meeting.
This is
Email them out ahead of time.
discussion, explore additional funding source for street projects. So John Danielson, you got me coming out of your back pocket.
No, I don't, but we just had a conversation before coming over that Deborah is looking at a couple of things.
Yeah, the reason this item's on the agenda, because in the minutes, it did talk about how the committee had requested this item to be at the next finance committee because you wanted the city manager and the community services director to explore funding for street projects. And so I met with our public works director briefly, and we are reviewing the capital projects budget to see what has been budgeted in the area of transportation and the different funding sources. And I think since you've been here for a while, you understand that a lot of our transportation funding comes from Measure A funds and the new Measure M funds that are mostly funneled through CCAG.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to share with you that we do explore the options through CCAG and any other transportation funds that come our way that are not with a lot of constraints or constraints.
Can you just briefly remind me what are Measure A, Measure M, and CCAG?
The county of San Mateo put together a ballot measure, which was Measure A, and that was passed, oh gosh, I think, what, 10 or 15 years ago, and then it was a half-cent sales tax that was added to all the sales. And then it was just re-approved by the voters recently. And the sales tax, we call it the Measure A program. It was approved in 2009, again, for, I believe it's a five-year tax. And it's broken down, the expenditure plan goals are to reduce commute corridor congestion, so it's very regional money. Also to enhance safety and to meet local needs. So there's a portion of the sales tax that goes to each agency.
Are you sure it's sales tax, not license fees?
This one is the sales tax component. The Measure A part is the sales tax component. Measure M is the newest one that was passed, and that is $10 on the vehicle license fee.
Well, it had been a prior one that was also a license fee.
Was there? Okay. So Measure M is the license fee
Yeah. I
component,
thought they both were.
and the city also gets a portion of that.
One of the things I would like to bring up is a ways to reinstitute the road impact. That would help tremendously. And I know that the council rescinded that, even though I guess, the one council totally in disagreement with that. But every other town around here has a road impact fee. It's not always called that, but it's roughly the same. And I talked to Bill Cummings about the legality of this. He said he thought there was a way that we could put something in place which would be equivalent to the road impact fee, despite Proposition 26. thought might not be called a road. So I think for the next meeting, and this would have to be a council item, but clearly we need to do some work ahead of that. Because the road impact fee brought in one year $1.6 million. And it brought in $1 million the other year. And I think if we could reinstitute it, we could count on approximately $1 million a year from that road impact fee, which would be huge for the town.
Jim, 2 points. One is, I think that there is, in addition to the road impact fee that was rescinded, there is a part of the fees that you pay when you develop is for road impact. It's called something different, but there is still a component of that. And I think that what really got the town in trouble on that fee, I think that it was worded poorly and that there were some issues with that, but I think it was the size of it. So to look at a road impact fee that will raise $1 million, I think is going to be difficult.
Well, every little helps, so whether it's
Yeah.
$1 million or not. I mean, I've thought, our attorney at the time told us that it was
What was the add-on? I think the basic one we passed is the one you're talking about is still part of the fees, but the council decided to increase that without having what do you call it, studies,
Nexus.
nexus study, and so there wasn't any real basis for it, and that's what we repealed that piece of it.
But no road
Nothing like that.
but no road impact fee is charged now.
And the road impact fee is to people
Yeah, there
building.
is.
Well, but it's not called a road impact.
It's not called a road impact fee, but it is for
Roads.
the wear and tear on the roads. There is a fee charged as part of the building.
What I would like to see done is to have a look at Woodside, Palo Alto, Mandel Park, Burton Game. They all have a substantial road impact fee. Now, I don't know, I mean, our attorney told us it was illegal. Well, it may be illegal, we don't know, but apparently nobody's going after these towns to get it stopped.
That's because they have something very different than what we have. And different in magnitude and different in the way it was calculated. But we should also look at what the component of the permit fees that are designed for road improvement.
And these are permits, these are part of the permit fee,
Right, but there's a part of that that is specifically designated for road improvements, and I don't know whether we're using that for it.
I don't know either, but I think that's another thing for Deborah to look at. But my own feeling is from what I remember, and I might be wrong, that was a very tiny amount. And I think it's high time. I mean, I was very vocal when this is time, if you remember. When I see those trucks, I mean, I'm Linwood at the moment. We're building how it seems like we're building how.
Well, he says that we perhaps could have a fee on the weight of the vehicles.
Right, and we
But
see
really ought to
that.
have a discussion at council to direct the finance committee to look at it, shouldn't we?
Well, I would think that we can't make any decisions, but I think that we can ask Deborah to look at what the towns are doing as part of the finance committee, because it is a possibility, as in this item here, it is a possibility to raise more money for the roads.
I think Jerry makes a good point, though, that maybe would expedite the process to agendize it at the next one at council to direct finance committee to look at that. It doesn't have to slow us down. I mean, we can start looking at it now.
I have no problem with putting it on the agenda.
Well, that's a process that we're supposed to use for the finance committee, is that they work on projects that are directed by the council.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of discussion in that too, Jerry. In the past, as whether that's all the finance committee is allowed to do.
Well, read the procedures, and that's what I
know.
see there.
But the council at one point was not in agreement on that. I
but it passed.
Well, I don't remember what I did or not. But anyway, bottom line is,
I may have it here, right here.
I look at this as a positive way of generating more money for the town, for the roads. And I don't know what the procedure is, I'm happy to have it brought to the council, it's not a problem, but in the meantime, if you get a chance, I'll look at what these other towns do, because when we bring it to the council, we also probably need a staff report.
Jim, I'm not opposing your idea at all. I'm just bringing it from a process standpoint.
Yeah, that's
We need to
fine.
have the council
No,
follow the process, it's laid out in the,
yeah.
in procedures and make that
No, no,
an
I
official
understand. And
request.
as we talked the other day, I think it's important that we never start following the processes. So if that's the process, I'm in agreement with it. But I feel this is an item, I mean, this is a potentially money-raising item for the town. So I would say, if Deborah comes up with some things, maybe for the February meeting, it can be agendized.
I think this is probably, if I may, a good topic for finance committee to talk about too, because it could be fairly complex. And boiling that down into more workable terms,
Yeah.
This could be a pretty big research project to see. And if what Jeff is indicating is right, is we may need to look at the whole system and saying, is our whole logic system in the right direction?
And Bill Connors needs to be involved in it as well.
Sure.
Well, unquestionably, Bill would have to be involved.
Because I've talked to him already at length about, is it possible?
Yeah.
And he said, I think it's possible. It would be done differently than we did before, but I still think it's possible.
Well, I think this fits under Brown Act, under exploring additional funding sources. If there was general consensus on getting this over to the city council, as well as proceeding,
Yeah.
as well as proceeding with beginning to do some research preliminary and starting to bring it back when we can to you. If there's general consensus on that, I don't have any problem with proceeding.
Yeah, that's
forward.
why I brought it up under item 4, because I think it's common item
I would think it is too under Brown Act, but Jerry's right, I think we do need to let council know what you're doing and give you full
4.
authority to do some
completely
research.
agree with
Yeah,
Okay.
it's my experience that there are lots of cities that have development impact fees. And I believe that's what it is that we're talking about. And in order to create this type of nexus where you have done the study to support the need for the fee, you do have to have, certain general plan documents and different studies to back up the needs.
Right.
And then it calculates what the long-term cost of those projects are in order to keep your infrastructure at
Yeah,
the
I
level
went on
that's
one
necessary.
in Menlo Park, Woodside, one other town, I can't remember now. And I looked at what they had. And even though I think they all call it something different, it looked very close to what we used to have.
Well, and you also have to know that there have been a few new laws passed in California,
26,
and
yeah.
that's 26 and of course 218, where things that are enacted today by local governments are not allowed, even if they were enacted in the past.
But I mean, in this case, based on Proposition 26, my belief, if we could bring in $1 million, it'd be worth going to the people to ask them to go in it, and that's what Proposition 26 says.
So how would you?
But that's just my.
Well, I think, are you the chair?
I don't know.
Or Jerry, you the
No,
chair?
no, I'm not chair.
I-
I'm older, but.
Bill asked me to come here and sit in his place.
Greg, we're discussing asking council to provide direction to
Oh, yeah.
the finance committee to go back and start taking a look at fee structures, including the road impact fee, and see, and start working on some of the more complicated issues with this group.
Maybe it ought to be part of just the review that we got to take place anyway for the budget.
Well, we have a new
Could
attorney
do that.
now. I think we ought to let him look at the original attorney's opinion, because it's inconsistent with a lot of cities. I mean, a lot of cities are doing
That's exactly what I brought up.
I'm sorry, I got here late, I was preoccupied.
I brought it up,
with something.
I've
I
also,
just- time got away
I
from
also
me.
reviewed it with Bill Connors.
Okay,
Bill Connors will be part of the team, we've discussed that, so.
okay, well, that's good. And I think the other thing, as far as sources of funding, I still think, you and I talked about the congestion fees in Measure A the county, I mean, every year, there's so much money in Measure A that's set aside for congestion projects for roads and improvement in the county. And other cities are very aggressive in getting that money, and I just think that we need to be aggressive in going after it. And I think the Marsh Road project would be a good one to take, test the water. And see.
And just for the people that weren't at the audit committee meeting, I would also bring up the fact, Greg, a couple of audit meetings ago, brought up the fact that we contribute over $60 million in property taxes to the county, and we get back just over $6 million. And so I wrote to the assessor saying, how do we get more money, more or less, saying you're screwing us. And he sent me a letter that I've given to Greg and to Deborah, saying, well, we're doing everything legally, and therefore there's no way you're going to get any money. So yesterday, Greg at the audit committee meeting, wasn't yesterday before, asked Deborah if she would look into how to do that calculation. And of course, if we get more money in property taxes, it fits in this agenda item, there'd be more money available for whatever we want to do.
Right?
Well, it's so much money, I just think we should prove it to ourselves, and the county should prove it to us that it's being calculated properly. It's so involved.
So, and Deborah was given that assignment at the audit committee.
Great.
Yeah, I need you to forward that to me because it's cut off some of the, right, I need you to forward that email to me. I'll talk to you.
Oh,
Email, yeah, because it was hard to read, it was part of the size of it
It's
cut off.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I just thought we'd get a schedule, at the top would be 60 million, at the bottom would be 6 million, and then we show the calculation that we
What's
use
your
it now.
email address in town? You're the one that I don't have. Okay. Okay.
So, Chairman Dobby, do we have consensus to bring it to council and then start bringing it back here to this committee?
I will submit a motion to do exactly that. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay. Next item. Discuss pension side funds due to California Employees Retirement System, CalPERS.
So this is also an item that was on your previous agenda, and when I reviewed the minutes, it did just talk a little bit about the item, but it didn't really explain to me where you were with that. The history that I found on this is that we do have side funds. You all know what that is, right? Or do you want me to go into
No, I still haven't figured out what they are.
Oh, so the pension benefits for the city employees are through PERS retirement. And PERS, as they are trying to figure out the best way to calculate the rates for all their local agencies, decided that all agencies that have less than 100 employees are going to go into a statewide pool. So they're not going to calculate individual rates for all the smaller agencies. And when they did that, they had to kind of do a true up with everybody. So some people were overfunded, some people were superfunded, some people were underfunded, and that's they did a calculation which they call the side fund for every agency that was then put into this pool. Now that we're in the pool, we're all paying the same rates. However, we have a layer within our rates which is amortizing the side fund liability. So as of June 30th, the city, we have two separate pension plans, one for safety employees and one for miscellaneous or non-safety employees. And the safety side fund is about $1.4 million. It's to be amortized over the next 6 years. And the miscellaneous side fund is just under $800,000, and it's to be amortized over the next 9 years. And so this is all calculated in the PERS rates that we pay annually, and they give us the calculation. The situation that comes up with that is that they use certain assumptions when they calculate their earnings for investments and other types of things. And they calculated a rate of 7.75% for all of their funds to be earning. That's the average that they say.
That's a discount rate, yeah.
That's a discount rate. And so, right now, nobody's earning that. So it is a valid thing for the city to go to PERS and do the calculation to say, how are our rates going to change going forward if we pay this off in advance, right? In some markets, there could be an advantage to just letting this side fund amortize. In other markets, like today's market, there may be an advantage to the city to paying it off up front, depending on where we need to spend our cash and our assets.
Well, why is it 5 years? Why isn't it 30 years? Most amortizations of past service costs are 30 years.
I don't know the exact reason why they put in the different, and I don't know why it's different for miscellaneous or safety, but I'm sure they have a reason why they came up
It
with
wasn't
different
our
amortizations.
decision, it was their decision.
I believe it was their decision. Yeah.
Right, but we have to pay it. I just think we should at least raise the issue and say, why is it 5 years? I mean, all the other pension amortizations for unfunded past service costs are normally 30 years.
Correct. And they have
I
done
think.
some
I may be
different,
wrong on
well, there are some things that they've done recently when they've shortened the amortization period for the loss that they incurred about 3 years ago. So they have done some things that are not in line with their general assumptions, and so this is one of them where
They
set
smooth
up.
their losses, I understand. I mean, they, by somehow not recording them in their current year, but smooth them over 3 or 5 years.
They do, and
Which is
I
just
think a couple of years
maybe
ago, they
I'm
took to the
not-
PERS board to change their policy to smooth it differently because they had all these different reasons. And I'm not recalling exactly what their reasoning was, but they do use different amortization periods. So, and I believe that the side fund, the way we pay it off is negotiable with PERS. They will accept, advance payments on it. I don't believe they're gonna change the discount rate for anybody, unless they changed it for everyone.
Well, I
But-
think that there's a lot of pressure on them to change it for everyone, so I don't know. My problem before was I was reluctant to pay cash
Right.
to build this down, even though it supposedly would save us 7.75%, because it just doesn't sound reasonable. And I
Well-
think somebody ought to fix it, will fix it.
How does the 7.75 play in this?
But they're saying that we're gonna save 7.75 by paying it off early, because otherwise we're gonna have to accrue, the discount rate in their payments, so.
Paying that much
That's an
interest.
awful lot better than we could ever do with.
I know, but I just think I think it's all phony baloney, and I hate to pay them to save a fictitious 7.75%.
Well, they will charge though, if I may, Adam. It's almost like yesterday and today between the audit committee and here, it would have been good to have both committees hearing, because it kind of makes your head swim to hear that on one hand, there's the irrevocable trust that we're seemingly going down the road of putting in the money to, and that's done on the retiree medical. And now we're talking about this true up really with the side pool
On the pensions.
on the pensions, which is a separate issue, although audit's doing one, finance committee is doing the other. Is one of the issues that came up yesterday, and I think it's apropos under Brown Act to discuss this, is that the audit committee wanted to be more involved in higher level, more complex issues rather than getting involved in some of the lower end minutia. And I think you have three things to consider here. One of them is, I think that unquestionably, Deborah should go back and do an analysis of what exactly do we get if we pay. If we just pay it outright here, what does that look like? What's our discount, and I'm not using discount rate in the term here, what's our discounted rate? What do we pay less on a regular basis because we paid down that fund? And three, what's the intangible of taking too much money out of fund balance? And then getting spooky if we have a bad year.
Right, absolutely. I think that's, and I also think, remember, the irrevocable trust, if we put money in the irrevocable trust, that's still our money.
No, that's not correct.
When it's locked up.
It's locked up.
Once that's on the other item.
It
That's
applies
on
to
the-
your account,
that's
but
on
you
the
don't have
healthcare.
access.
That's right.
Correct.
Yeah, that's on the
Yeah.
healthcare, not the pensions.
I mean, it does apply to your account or to the city's account. And, most legislative bodies don't have enough faith in their successors to say that they won't touch it. So, and even on GASB and other kinds of accounting methods, you really don't even get credit. I mean, you have faithfully kept, what, 1.25 million or
Yeah, we
whatever it is, haven't touched a penny of it.
No, but John, I'm saying it's still our money in the irrevocable trust.
That's not correct. It's off of our balance sheet. It's no longer the city's
I
money.
know, but
You
if,
just don't
for
know.
instance, the amount we owed went way down,
Mhm.
the money in that irrevocable trust was still used to pay.
The trustee account.
It becomes, yeah, it
Becomes
becomes,
a trustee.
it's, yes, it's
Well,
for the benefit of the.
If all of a sudden we didn't know as much for some.
Well, because you lost half your employees. I mean, that amount could drop in half once you do another calculation.
Which is what we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, so
Clear it up.
I'm reluctant to pay anything until everything settles down. I mean, this whole pension issue at the state level, Governor Brown's trying to do anything. Last night, Mayor Reed made the proposal that's on the June ballot for the city of San Jose, and we're gonna talk about that in the next agenda item, but there's just a lot of things, and there's a statewide initiative that's gonna be on, I think, if you got the money. But also, so I just soon lay low for a year and see what's happening before we start writing
I don't
checks.
think they're putting it in a revocable trust changes anything.
Well, that's
Just
one
means-
fund,
It just means we cannot use that money for anything else.
which is saying hands off to anybody in the future if we decide to put it here. The other part of this, though, is it talking about meaty topics, is not only deciding whether or not of the three ways to go on this, on the side pool, in relationship to what your cash flows are, but also then deciding what kind of, how you would pay it down and how it would go forward. So I would suggest, I think that we're just at the beginning of it, especially with the new finance director, of coming back and with the, with the agreement of the committee, is we really need to do an in-depth analysis of
I
this.
agree totally.
And you have to have all the figures in
I
front of you before
personally
you
don't really
decide.
understand it, I'll be honest with you.
Well, and I think there's a lot in action here. I think it's gonna
There
be
is.
a real threshold year on pensions statewide and in the cities, because, Benlow passed theirs. And I could review what Mayor Reed had last night. I should have brought a copy of it, because he had a one-page outline, and he took about an hour to go through it on what they're proposing, and it's
They're
very,
gonna cut-
very significant.
They're gonna cut pensions and.
Well,
benefits.
they have no choice. Their pensions cost now are 50% of their salaries. Pension costs alone are 50%. They have no choice, and I think the unions are recognizing it, and it's just really a dilemma.
And Brown has never mentioned, since he said he was gonna change the retirement age and all these other things, in his budget, he never mentions that.
I know, but there was the article this morning in the Post or the Daily Journal, one of the two, it was in the Daily Journal, did mention that everybody knows that they're gonna have to look at the pension issue. And they did, but I don't remember whether the article was just mentioning that or whether they were quoting Brown, I don't remember, but it's in the Daily Journal today.
Well, that never really wrote. Okay,
I can tell you what they did if you wanna know, what he's
Well,
proposing.
you have to do that under comments because I don't think it's agendized.
Well, the next item is agendized, so I'll wait till then.
Okay.
okay, so we finished with that item?
So
Well-
for this item, I believe that I will do the analysis. I will contact PERS and get an outline from them. If we were to pay down or to pay off the side fund, what would that do to our rates? And do an analysis of what the benefit would be. And then we will use that analysis along with when we're putting our budget together to.
It almost makes me think too, and I know this is probably out of line, but because of the complexity of what's going on in the audit committee and what's going on, I don't want to make it appear that neither committee knows what the other one is doing. I mean, because there's pretty substantial decisions being made here and directions going on that, so an irrevocable plus, although we have money set aside and that's not a big deal, but in really understanding that we're going to be making probably some substantial investments in either paying down or paying off some of these long-term obligations. But just everyone understanding there is an impact to fund balance.
Right. But I don't think there's any disagreement between the audit committee and the finance committee. I think we almost had the same discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that nobody feels like they're being excluded from knowing what the other side is doing.
I'm unclear on what the purview of the audit committee is compared to the finance committee, and, because it sounds like they're taking actions that.
Yeah, it's very nebulous. I mean, I'm on both committees, so I don't know the difference when I go to these meetings.
Well,
I mean, I deal with what's on the agenda, and so whatever the agenda is, sets the
but
scope.
really, the audit committee originally, in most places I've been in companies, is for the auditors to review the audit,
Right,
and then discuss the audit,
right.
and then recommend any changes that would improve the audit, or recommend any things they have found that are illegal or anything else. That's normally
Internal
what
controls, you know.
Yeah, well, what happened, we went through the footnotes with him, and these issues came up, because we didn't understand them. So that's how we got into it, is through the footnotes that she just read. The auditor was sitting there, and we went through each footnote, and as we discussed it with him, we got into the ramifications of it. So that's how we got into it.
So Jim, do you feel it would have been more appropriate for the finance committee to handle the irrevocable trust? Or because it was initiated through,
the finance committee. in my
because it
mind.
was initiated through the
But I
footnotes
think
of
the
the.
council had directed the finance committee to take a look at this whole area of benefits and so forth.
I think it's the finance committee. I mean, I think the audit committee, maybe our discussion the other day went a little too far, but in general, I think it's really, the audit committee's really for the auditor to give his opinion on how well we did.
Has there ever been a practice of those two committees meeting together? Should the next meeting
I
be
wonder
a
if they
joint
should.
meeting?
It's not, there's nothing with harm doing that, but, it's,
I actually think,
Except to
I don't
make
know if the rules are applied now, but in general, the audit committee, at least in my experience, shouldn't really be a separate committee, but it also should just be a committee listening to the auditors.
Well, that's how it was set up. I was the first chair of the thing, and that's really what we focused on, was working with the outside auditors, working with internal controls.
Yeah.
There was an awful lot of stuff to do in those days in that area. Now there's less stuff.
well, on the purchasing
They get
procedure is still an issue.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that they should be doing the purchasing.
No, but again, it's, the auditors commented on it.
Yeah, but I'm not
Bill
sure
is
that
very
committee should be, that committee should be handling that.
I think you're right. I think we've expanded the audit committee. Role maybe,
Well,
it should be, and a lot of that stuff should be.
Yeah, I think so too. It used to be the finance committee would talk about purchasing policies, so I don't know how it morphed over to the audit committee.
Well, I don't know really how it did. I think it was mainly because the auditor, one of the meetings I was on, basically asked us if we had a purchase policy.
Yeah.
And the answer was, well, we have one, and it's any good.
So you go to council, and council says, okay, finance committee. no,
They
do
should, that's the way
something.
it should be.
So do you feel either of you feel that the finance committee could handle everything that has to do with the audit report as well?
Well, internal controls is something the audit committee needs to make sure.
Right.
So that would be once or twice a year?
They were meeting, I think, auditors come in, do a preliminary, they're meeting with them after that.
So it just to follow up on the internal controls?
Yeah, unless there's some special thing that comes up, you know.
They usually come in, I think the auditor usually comes in October, November.
Yeah, well, they do a preliminary earlier in the year. you know.
Well, maybe we could talk offline about it and see where this is.
Well, I think it gets into this whole issue of reviewing with the committee, about committees in general,
Right.
and whether you have, you still need to have an audit committee. At one time we did, I felt, I'm less sure today.
No, I think we should. I think we still have it, because if there's something.
It's because you're an auditor.
I know it, I gotta protect my own profession.
Get out of here.
In many cities I've been to, the finance committee acts as the audit committee.
Say again?
In many agencies that I've been at, the finance committee acts as the audit committee.
Well, we could have two of them, but we need to probably limit the scope of the audit committee. And leave the finance committee to do more of the.
Yeah.
Do you get paid by the committee?
I know that. Yeah, I get two checks, two committees.
In general, in public companies, the audit committee is separate.
Right.
Well, Chairman, then is there consensus then that we're going to go back? There's at least 3 areas of analysis that have to be completed and brought back here. Is there anything we need to bring to council beforehand, or are we okay on that?
And I think that the question, the things that the audit committee and the finance committee are now asking Deborah to do are pretty much the same.
Yeah, similar kinds of things, not exactly the same, but similar.
I mean, I think we all need at the council, at least, sorry, Jerry, I'm interrupting you, we all need a clear picture of all these funds and what we owe and what we don't owe, because I'm telling you, I don't fully understand.
That's why I was a little bit worried about this group not being privy to the irrevocable trust.
Well, I think that there probably ought to be a joint meeting the audit committee and finance committee to talk about that piece of it.
How about we get our act together, do a good job of that analysis, we won't delay it, and then suggest that there be a joint.
I agree.
meeting.
I want to get something on my card, right?
I think that's right. I have no problem with that. That's a good idea.
Although I think that
So should we have a
Alan was
motion
gonna
that you should get your act together?
say, we're working on it diligently.
I'm in about time.
Yeah. There you go.
So are we finished with that item?
Yeah,
So,
I feel-
okay, the
No, I
next,
see, I just wanna, I think it makes sense that you get that analysis done and bring it back, and then, you know, if we're gonna have the two committees, and they ought to both take a look at it, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
do we need any motion on that item?
If there's consensus, I think we're good.
Okay, all right. So item number 6 is recommendation of city council to implement a second tier of term limit for all new employees. And just before we get into discussion, I will say this has come up at least twice to the financial committee before, and there had been some disagreement as to whether we could in fact, or that John as the city manager could in fact implement that, especially with the police union, without negotiation. And when I asked John about it, he said, no, we can't do it. Well, I think he may have changed his mind now, or as a result of his discussion with Bill Connors. And I think in general, I think that the finance committee in the past all wanted to do this if we could do it.
I got bad news for you. Bill changed his mind. So it is a meet and confer item. And I think that there's aspects of it you can discuss. I think that when we're trying to have a discussion with the POA in an off-cycle area,